Hey, what is going on, guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, I'm going to be updating my list on the best AD carries for patch 6.10. So first up, I have Jhin. Right now, Jhin is one of the better overall AD carries. He's got a pretty good early game. His level 6 all-in is really good. His mid game isn't all that bad either. And then once you get to late game as Jhin, if you do have your full build, your 4th shot crit is going to deal so much damage in late game teamfights, especially if you do get that off on the enemy squishy. His wave clear is pretty good as well with his Q and his W. In my opinion, a lot of people underestimate the mobility that Jhin does have in his kit. Once you do get a few crit items on Jhin, then you're going to be able to proc your passive a lot in teamfights, which will give you that burst of movement speed, so you can actually kite pretty well with him and stay pretty mobile in teamfights. His ultimate is really good too for either finishing off that low health target, or if you do see the enemy squishy or the enemy champion caught out of position, then you can pop your ultimate to get that slow off on them so that your team can engage. His burst is really good too. Whenever he does have that 4th shot crit up, then make sure you do try to go aggressive in the laning phase, because most of the time you are going to win that trade since your auto will crit and theirs will not. And a few cons to Jhin are that he does not have a gap closer. This isn't the biggest deal though, or it isn't as big of a deal as it is on some of the other AD carries, since he does have his passive, which whenever he does crit, he is going to gain that movement speed. And he is a little bit harder to play in my opinion than some of the other AD carries. Next up, I have Ashe. So the main reason I like Ashe for solo queue is because of the pick potential she does have with her ultimate. When I'm playing some of the other AD carries, if I don't do too well in the laning phase and I fall behind, I feel like it's just so hard to carry with them. But when I'm playing as Ashe, I always know that I'm going to be useful just due to the CC that she does have, and due to the fact that she does have the global stun on her ultimate. You can use that to engage really well in mid to late game team fights, and if you do catch out the enemy squishy with it, it could end up winning your team the game right there. She is really good against tanks as well. She can kite them really nicely, and she can do a lot of damage to them with her Q active. The vision with her E is a really nice part of her kit too, because she can use that to check if the enemies are doing Baron or Dragon, and she can also use that to see where the enemy jungler is. Her level 6 all-in is one of the best for any AD carry too, so if you are playing with an aggressive support in the laning phase, then just look to engage with your ultimate at level 6, because chances are you will at least burn their flash. And one con to Ashe is that she does not have a gap closer. Next on my list is going to be Miss Fortune. So you guys might be a little bit surprised about this pick here, but right now the build of Youmuu's and Black Cleaver on Miss Fortune is just absolutely tearing up solo queue. I looked at some stats, and right now that build on her is at a 65% win rate, which is really crazy. Now the reason this build is so strong on Miss Fortune is because she can apply the Black Cleaver passive just really easily in teamfights with her E and with her ultimate, so that just allows her to shred those tanks, and she can do really well in the mid to late game. Her ultimate is just such a strong ability too. You can just end up winning a team fight for your team if you get a nice AoE ultimate off, since it will do a lot of damage. She does have the attack speed steroid on her W, which allows her to go for this Youmuu's Black Cleaver build. You don't even really need to buy any attack speed items on Miss Fortune. You could go for one, but there's really no need to do so, because the W is going to give you that boost of attack speed. She does have pretty good poke in the laning phase too with her Q. If she can bounce that off of a low health minion and hit the enemy champion behind, then it's going to deal a lot of damage. Her zoning potential is quite good as well in teamfights with her E, and like I touched on before, her ultimate can absolutely melt in mid to late game teamfights. And a few cons to MF are that she does not have a gap closer, and she is also pretty weak if she does fall behind. Next up, I have Jinx. So Jinx is arguably one of the best scaling AD carries in the game right now. Her mid-game power spike of the Infinity Edge and Hurricane is just absolutely crazy. You're gonna get a lot of crit from that build, and therefore, if you can get some nice AoE crits off in teamfights, then you could just end up solo carrying a teamfight and solo carrying a game with Jinx, as long as you can position correctly. She also does have pretty good crowd control for an AD carry with her W and her E. Her ultimate is really good for finishing off that low health target as well. When you are in the laning phase as her, make sure you do pay attention to your other lanes. Always be watching top and mid lane when you do have the opportunity, because if you do see them low on HP, you can throw your ult over there, and if you do end up getting the kill, it can get you ahead of the enemy AD carry in the laning phase. She is also a very good tower pushing AD carry because of the passive on her Q. Her cleanup potential is absolutely insane in teamfights as well with her passive. Once she does get that first kill or that first assist, then she's just going to be able to chase down those low health targets, and she's going to just stay really mobile and be really hard to catch in teamfights. And one con to Jinx is that she does not have a gap closer. And lastly, on my top 5 for this patch is pretty much no surprise here, or at least I don't think it should be a surprise to you guys, and that champion is going to be Lucian. So right now Lucian is absolutely tearing up solo queue. He's got the highest pick rate for any AD carry, and he also does have the highest win rate for any ADC. So when a champion's got a high pick rate and they also have a high win rate, it obviously means they are a pretty strong pick. So the reason Lucian is so good is because of the new Youmuu's and Black Cleaver build. This build just synergizes so well with him because it gives him a lot of burst, and it's also really easy for Lucian to proc the Black Cleaver passive with his passive and with his ultimate. He's a really bursty AD carry too. If you are playing with a good all-in support, then you can definitely look to get ahead in the laning phase and do really well. I would highly recommend pairing him up with someone like a Leona or a Braum, because those two combos just allow you to have a really good early game. And if you can either get like the Leona stun off, or if you can get the Braum Q off especially, then you can look to go aggressive and look to get kills in the early game. He does have the dash on his E2, which allows him to stay really mobile in those team fights. He's a pretty good dueling champion too, and he does shred those tanks really nicely with this new build. A few cons to Lucian are that he is a shorter ranged AD carry, and he also does not have the best late game when comparing him to some of the other ADCs, since he is primarily single target damage and he also is shorter ranged. So first on the honorable mentions is going to be Caitlyn. Caitlyn does have a really strong late game and a really good early game. Her mid game isn't the best though. She does have a little bit of a dip in her mid game, but if you can get past that mid game, or if you can just have a really good early game on her, then you can definitely be very successful on Caitlyn. Next up I have Sivir. So Sivir is still a pretty good pick for AD carry in my opinion. She does have a pretty good mid to late game, since she will get those nice AoE crits off with her W in team fights, and she also does have her ultimate, which is always going to be a very strong ability for solo queue. It's just such a good engage tool or a disengage tool. You can really use it in a lot of situations to catch the enemies out or save your team if they do get caught. Her spell shield is really good too if the enemy team does end up getting Zed. So if they do get Zed, I would recommend picking Sivir as your AD carry in that situation, since you are going to have your spell shield, which will counter Zed's ultimate. And lastly, on the honorable mentions for this patch, I have Twitch. So personally, I haven't been having the most success with Twitch in solo queue lately. A lot of people do still rate him pretty high, and don't get me wrong, he is still a pretty good AD carry, but I feel like because he does have quite a bit of a weaker early game than a lot of the other AD carries, if you fall behind in the laning phase as him, it's just so hard to get to your core build and get to that late game where he really does shine. When you do get to your late game build on Twitch, you can just do so much damage in teamfights and you can solo carry a game, but if you can't get past that early game and you can't get to that core build on him, then you really aren't going to be very successful on him. So that is going to be it for this video, guys. If you did enjoy, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you have not already. So thanks for watching, guys. Have an awesome day, and I will see you in my next video.